Do my hair back.
Good morning, brothers and sisters. Assalamu alaikum. And thank you for tuning into my channel. As always, I thank you for tuning into my channel to watch my content. I'm just so happy to be here today. I hope that everybody is having a very good, peaceful, and happy morning. As you know, I always wish nothing but health and happiness to everybody watching and everybody that you love. And I normally say that at the end of my stream, but I just feel compelled to say that at the beginning of this day. So I see that I got a few good people here. What is going on to everybody? Look at the trees, as always. Carlita, good to see you. John Hudson. All right. So a little later than expected. Yep, indeed. Godspeed. A little bit late, right? So let's get into today's topic. I have been wrong about God. Now, if you were thinking that my title was just some clickbait and that I actually was still an atheist and I was just going to talk about more arguments for atheism, um, you would be correct. I'm still an atheist. I don't believe in a God. And if anyone thought that I did, then, bravo to me for clickbait reasons. Yeah, nope, definitely still an atheist. But you know what? I was in fact wrong. It's just that I wasn't wrong with respect to like what I'm giving the implication of being wrong about. I want to make clear that for many years, I was, one of the agnostic atheists merely, and I actually kind of took a little bit of contention with strong atheism because I felt like the evidence that there wasn't a God was lacking. But part of the reason for this was because, epistemically speaking, I was as charitable as one could be to the most plausible version of a God that I could come up with, which would be, of course, the deistic God. But in acknowledgement to the fact that the conversation about naturalism versus theism, for example, right? Um, we are normally, when we're talking to religious people about a God that they believe in, even if they aren't arguing for, like, let's say it's a Christian, maybe they're not arguing specifically for Christianity, but they're arguing for theism. They're still arguing for traditional theism, so the theistic God. So the arguments that we can use to refute that one are still sufficient for positive atheism. And there's also more to be said about the given premises and circumstances that we have. So if you are somebody tuned in who is a theist, not atheist, but I mean, obviously, my fellow atheists are welcome as well. But let's say you're somebody who, actually, whether you're theist or atheist, you're familiar with the Kalam cosmological argument, right? We're not going to give a breakdown of the whole argument. I mean, the argument goes everything that begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist, therefore the universe has a cause. Then, of course, there's some argumentation that God is the only, thing that could have the necessary properties for that. Anyway, just looking at that first premise, though, I want to. I made some slides, but let's address this from the standpoint of the. I'm gonna full screen from my computer so I can read this better. Okay, cool. Premise one of the Kalam, right? Which I personally don't disagree with. I mean, I could be. I'm open to the possibility of being wrong, but I think it's highly improbable that it's false. Like, I accept this premise as at least being overwhelmingly likely to be the case, right? So, premise one of the Kalam: everything that begins to exist has a cause. Now, the common justification for this, that I think does justify this, right, Justification doesn't have to give certainty. Let's remember that when we talk about epistemology, it just has to be a reliable process, right? If you're a process reliabilist, that's the theory of justification to which I subscribe. Anyway, if you're saying everything we have ever observed beginning to exist has had a cause, right? Let's address the logic of this, right? And if you're somebody who accepts this, let's just acknowledge that we accept this, right? So the logic goes like this: every example of B that we have observed has been explained by A. Therefore, every time we see an example of B, we can infer it is explained by A. So we're not going to absolute certainty. It's not deductive, but it's still highly justification conferring, right? I think so, at least. B, in this case, the first premise of the Kalam, something beginning to exist, every example of something beginning to exist that we have observed has been explained by A being a cause. Therefore, every time we see an example of something beginning to exist, we can infer it is explained by a cause. Okay. But now let's replace these variables here. B with the mystery being about a state of affairs or something beginning to exist, right? And A being a naturalistic explanation. You're going to see where I'm going with this. Every example of B that we have observed has been explained by A. Therefore, every time we see an example of B, we can infer that it is explained by A. Every example of a mystery that we've observed has been explained by a naturalistic explanation. Therefore, every time we see a mystery, we can infer that it has a naturalistic explanation. Right? Here's my syllogism for all this. It is most reasonable to believe that which is most probable. Naturalism is the most probable explanation for any given mystery. The origin of the universe is a mystery. Under naturalism, no God exists. There's the conclusion. It is most reasonable to believe that no God exists. Now, again, we went to this being an argument for what was most reasonable to believe, right? He says, yes, this is analogous. So the black swan fallacy, we should be careful when we make that claim, because it's always the intuitive. People do make this fallacy quite often when addressing this argument, right? Oh, and it looks like Christian actually beat me to the punch here. Induction is not a black swan fallacy. The best objection here is the issue with defining an atemporal cause. Okay, so for me, and I'll go to my point. Induction isn't a black swan fallacy, but it's very easy to confuse them because a black swan fallacy does actually kind of include induction. It just goes to say that because inductively speaking, this has always been the case, basically that it's deductive and this is entailed, right? And that's not the case. It's not actually entailed. So, yeah, so that was the first argument that I wanted to bring up today, which is, again, that's not a deductive argument intended to give absolute certainty, right? It's just a probabilistic argument given some reasonable justification, I think. But that does not mean that I am done today. I wanted to simplify things, but let's get into it here because I have a few different ones. I just like 3 or 4 slides. I don't know. This one is very simple. It almost seems too simple to really be defeating. And I'm not claiming to have come up with this myself. I put it in my own words here, but this argument is not a new one right here. Just let's clarify that. This is the argument from Divine Hiddenness, though. If God exists, God will make his existence believable to all humans. Now, it's more intuitive to use the word knowable, but one could, I'm being a bit pedantic here with the word believable because the thing is if the theist believes in a God that doesn't require knowledge of his existence, but rather belief in his existence, then that could be a point of contention with the premise. So I wanted to just say believable. and I'll improve upon that later. But premise two, God's existence is not believable to all humans. Conclusion: God does not exist. Now, this is deductive. Obviously, somebody can take contention with one of the premises, but um, I would be interested to see the person that said that this is not a deductive argument, that actually understood what they were talking about when they used the word deductive argument, right? Like somebody that I had already known I could take seriously, basically. Anyway, let's move forward because that was a very simple one. I call this the God of elitism, right? And it really is just kind of divine hiddenness and evil, but you'll see where I'm going with it. Premise one: an omnibenevolent being would either A, not require belief in his existence to avoid torture in hell, or B, make belief in his existence achievable to all people, not just a chosen group. So this is the improving that I talked about earlier. He would make the belief achievable or accessible, right? And the thing is if you're going to subscribe to a religious, God, like you're a Muslim, you're a Christian, right? I don't see how you could possibly deny that not everyone in the world has access to your holy book, right? Some isolated tribe, they don't have Bibles and Qurans, right? In North Korea, it's punishable. They get them, but there's all different kinds of things, circumstances in which your religion is not, like, your holy book is not accessible to people. Maybe they speak a language it hasn't been translated in. I mean, etc., right? But the point is, a lot of people would say it has to be obvious. I would just say achievable. But I'm making the case that it's not even achievable to all people, right? And that's pretty easy to support. Premise two: the theistic God is alleged to be omnibenevolent. Premise three: the theistic God does not make belief in his existence achievable to all people. Premise four: the theistic God requires belief in his existence to avoid torture in hell. There are some theologies that reject premise four. So, because of the fact that Christians don't universally agree on everything, I will clarify that there are people who might take a theology that say otherwise. Traditionally, commonly, overwhelming majority kind of thing, though, they do believe that you have to believe in his existence to avoid being tortured in hell, right? The conclusion that follows from this: the theistic God does not exist. Not so different in category: the logical problem of evil. Premise one: that which is incoherent cannot be true. Premise two: that which has contradictory attributes is incoherent. Premise three: the theistic God is omnibenevolent, yet causes suffering to exist. And if you want to be more, I guess, philosophically on the mark, you might want to include the word excessive before suffering to more easily make your case. I would go as far as saying suffering, but you could more easily make your case and defend against some rebuttals in advance if you just add the word excessive prior to the word suffering. Premise four: causing suffering to exist and being omnibenevolent are contradictory attributes. Obviously, there's all kinds of. This is why we have the word theodicy, right? Is people think that there's a way around this. You can't get around this. Conclusion: the theistic God does not exist. So there's another one. And let me see here. I think that was the last. Let me see. 1 second. What does he say? Okay, I noticed that Christian says he rejects premise 3 and 4. I am actually interested in the fact that you reject premise 4. Although I wouldn't call myself like surprised or shocked that you would reject premise three. That's at least plausible to me. That is a good discussion for later, though. Um, yeah. So anyway, this has been a simple morning couple of arguments for atheism. Just sort of because I wanted to make it clear that um, I'm not merely a lack theist. I actually believe there are no gods, and because of the fact that for so long I've argued for only being an agnostic atheist, only being a lack theist, um, I guess I want to make it a little bit more known uh, that I am in fact a hard atheist now. And I think that there are, plenty of arguments which complement the ones that I've provided here very simply to make that case. And before I get going, some of you might have seen lately, I'm not going to play the trailer again right now, right here, but I'm actually working on a documentary about the streets of Austin. The documentary is intended to highlight the experiences and the lives of the people of the streets of Austin, Texas, namely the homeless people. Obviously, I want to interview other people, but mostly the people who have to live out there. But part of what I'm going to be doing with this is how should I explain myself? I'm going to be trying to do a fundraiser with this documentary, and I should have made a banner. I could type one out really quickly. Yeah, I'll say, "Is this what I want you guys to do?" Whether you want to wait till I make this documentary. Oh man, I thought I was typing a banner. My bad. This is how unprofessional I am for me to still literally be doing this. There we go. Raise those funds. Now, what I want you to consider doing, if you go to the description of this video, you will see the PayPal for Austin Atheists Helping the Homeless. I want to clarify, my documentary is not like endorsed or promoted by this group, nor is my fundraiser. And my documentary isn't about this group, but this is a group that I work with that does charity to provide homeless people with bus passes, with food, with clothes, with hygiene products, et cetera, et cetera. So if you want to contribute to a good cause and you want to do so in such a way where you're working with fellow non-believers contributing to a good cause for like humanitarian reasons, for humanist reasons, that's something you could do. And again, that group has nothing to do with me. I don't get any of that money, right? That's not my thing at all. I do just ask that you write in the memo hashtag raise those funds, because after doing the fundraiser, I'd like to inquire about how much money I was able to raise for the group by doing a fundraiser. And in some of my videos, I tag my own Patreon and Cash App and all that. Donating to me is supporting my content, but donating to that group is doing charity. Two different things, obviously. Anyway, so as always, what I do mean, I am authentic about, I wish to everybody watching, whether you be theist, atheist, religious, or secular, I wish nothing but health and happiness to you and everybody that you love. Stay safe, everybody, and stay warm out there.